we have our headliner for the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2025. And it is not John Cena like I thought it would be. You know, we hear a lot from WWE about this being the Paul Levesque era. And it's only fitting that Paul Levesque be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And so he shall, as part of Wrestlemania 41 weekend in Las Vegas. Triple H will get his solo induction into the Hall of Fame. The announcement came during a town hall that the company was hosting at its headquarters with employees. WWE has released video of what happened. It was the same stage where they hosted the Raw Netflix kickoff. Levesque and Nick Khan, they were wrapping up their remarks when Shawn Michaels' entrance music began to play. And Triple H had a surprised look on his face that will likely become a new meme. Michaels danced out onto the stage, followed by The Undertaker, and they announced that because they were the two most tenured members, talent-wise, of the WWE family, they were making an executive decision to announce that Triple H would be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And Stephanie McMahon came out. She claimed that she had no idea that, she wasn't clued in about any of this as far as what was going to happen. Yes, and she just so happened to be there that day, even though she doesn't work there. Why else would Stephanie be attending that town hall that day if she had no idea that her husband was being announced for the Hall of Fame? Now, whether Triple H knew or not, he played it up like he didn't. He said he was speechless. He didn't have much to say other than he was going to kill Nick Khan when it was over. This time of year, they're usually already contacting people for the Hall of Fame. So it's hard to believe they kept him in the dark on things this long and that they hadn't already decided on a headline inductee and they started, reaching out to people. Because Triple H is part of the decision-making process on that, if not the one who makes that call. But at the post-show scrum last night, he was asked about the Hall of Fame. This is what he said. Nick and I talked about the Hall of Fame many times. And he would always bring up the fact that, when are we going to put you in? And I would say, not now, because no matter how I do it, it looks like I'm putting myself in the Hall of Fame. And I'm just not going to do that. So he said that we have to do it eventually. And I was like, okay, if we have to do it eventually, let's wait 3, 4, 5 years, and then we'll talk about it. And he said, okay. We had an entirely different plan for the Hall of Fame, and we got to the end of the town hall, and Shawn's music hit. I thought, honestly, being lazy, I didn't read the end of the town hall run sheet, and there was more after the Q&A that I just didn't see. And I was like, oh, Shawn's going to come out here and talk about the new LFG show that we're doing and put that over. So I was confused when he came out. When Taker came out, it doubled, and then I saw Nick walk to the other side of the room, and I realized that somehow this is going to affect me. I wasn't sure if it was going to positively affect me or negatively affect me until Undertaker mentioned Wrestlemania. So I wonder what their different plan was for the Hall of Fame, if they had a plan like who that headliner was going to be. But look, people are going to make jokes about him inducting himself into the Hall of Fame. It's not like he wasn't going in at some point. He's already in as a member of DX. This will technically make him a 2-time inductee. But they're running low on potential headliners to go in. Rock is going to go in when Rock is ready to go in. John Cena, I thought he would go in this year just because they have him for the year. Right? Which is not entirely true because he's still filming stuff. The reason that he's been gone, by the way, since the Raw Netflix debut, he's been in Hungary filming a movie. And he said last night that he was on his way back to Hungary, I guess, to pick up filming. So we're probably not going to see him again until Elimination Chamber. So it's not really like they have him full time, but they do have him, blocked off for all the big events this year. And you never know what his schedule is going to be like next year or the year after that. He may get even busier. So it just, even though he's still active, right? They've put people in who are still active, like Rey Mysterio, right? He's still active. I thought for sure, he'd be going into the Hall of Fame this year. But clearly they're not doing that. They could have gone with Batista, I suppose. I don't know what his schedule is like. Jericho, he's not going in right now for obvious reasons. Brock Lesnar's not going in right now for obvious reasons. who else is left as far as like a headline attraction, right? Austin, Foley, Kurt Angle, Undertaker, Kane, they're all in, right? They're already in. It's not as if he doesn't deserve his own induction. He absolutely does. He deserves an induction for his in-ring career alone, which we know is over, right? He's never going to wrestle another match ever again. But then you add in all of his work with NXT and the black and gold era that he gave us, the Performance Center, and what that's become. And that's to say nothing of his work now as the chief content officer. You can't say it's an accolade that is undeserved, for whatever the WWE Hall of Fame actually means to you. To some people, it's just another way to sell tickets and make money. To a lot of the talent, it's a nice little tip of the cap for a job well done in their career, and it's a platform for them to speak to their peers and to the fans, kind of like one last moment in the sun. Although for Triple H, this is hardly going to be his last moment in the sun. For other guys, they can charge more for their indie bookings and their convention bookings, billing them as a WWE Hall of Famer. I don't think Triple H is going to be making his way around the indie circuit and going to, WrestleCon. I don't think that's something he needs to worry about. But we know he's going to be in the spotlight for years to come. You look at his resume, 14-time world champion in WWE, worked with all the biggest names of the modern era. As I said many years ago, he was never the guy, but he was the guy who always worked with the guy. Would he have ended up in the same spot that he's in now had he not married into the family? Probably not. Marrying the boss's daughter definitely came with its perks. But you got to remember, he was sitting in on production meetings and taking an interest in stuff like that as early as 1997. When he was still dressing up as the blue blood from Connecticut. I'm sure Vince saw that and he took a liking to him and how interested he seemed to be in that sort of thing. But let's not pretend like him being in the room, for those meetings wasn't a self-serving thing either. And look, it worked out in his favor. One of my favorite stories was the WWE writer who brought Triple H the rundown, the script for that night's episode of Raw. Probably would have been 2002, 2003. Only for Triple H, he opens his door and he's like, he doesn't even bother to read it. He just asks him, he goes, "Am I fucking going over?" or the time he was supposedly speaking up backstage in some meeting about Kurt Angle, who was going to be getting the WWF title for the first time. And I think Kurt himself may have told this story. But supposedly Triple H thought that Angle was too small and he wasn't believable. And it was Gerald Briscoe who spoke up and said, well, if he's so small and unbelievable, why don't you shoot with him and find out how much his size really holds him back? And Triple H backed down at that point. These are all classic stories that have been told. Do I believe that every story ever told about his backstage politicking is real? Not every single one of them, but there have been enough of them to know that he played the game better than anyone and absolutely looked out for himself, right? A lot of people in wrestling have looked out for themselves and still do. But he was in a position that a lot of wrestlers would have died to be in, right? He was in a position that a lot of wrestlers were not, to influence things and to influence not only his creative, but other people's pushes as well. I remember Seth Mates, another former WWE writer, talking about how the original plan for Rob Van Dam was for him to beat Triple H to become the first world heavyweight champion at Unforgiven in 2002. And that got changed, right? And that's just one story. How many more of those must there have been? Think about that. Of all the matches that Triple H and RVD ever had on TV or pay-per-view, I don't think RVD ever beat him a single time. Not once. So there's that side of Triple H. But there's also the Triple H who was one of the founding fathers of one of the most successful factions in WWE history. I still believe that second version of DX, the one that was led by Triple H after WrestleMania 14, with him and China and X-Pac and the New Age Outlaws. I believe that to be the best version of that group out of all of them. And not just one successful faction, but two with Evolution, which helped launch the careers of two men who went on to become future Hall of Famers themselves, in Randy Orton and Batista. His rivalry with The Rock and the matches those two guys had, they had great fucking matches. I think those two brought out the best in each other. His matches with Stone Cold. Look, Triple H was one of the beneficiaries of just kind of being around during the Attitude Era, as so many other people were, when Austin got hot and Rock got hot. And Vince McMahon was the luckiest promoter in the world that he had two stars, the caliber of Austin and Rock, who got as popular as they did at the same exact time. And that really helped light the territory ablaze, so to speak. And there were a lot of other very important supporting players. Undertaker, Mankind, some people, Kane, Big Show. I'm not taking away from their own accomplishments, but they were supporting players in the overall cast. So is Triple H. And he got to work with all of them. He got to work with Rock. He got to work with Austin. His matches with Mick Foley. Their street fight at the Royal Rumble in 2000 is the match that really elevated Triple H to main event status in a lot of people's eyes, mine included. His matches with Shawn Michaels. The two-man power trip and their tag team title match with Jericho and Benoit in 2001, one of the greatest matches in Raw history. Tearing his quad and continuing the match. It's the stuff of legend. Last Man Standing with Jericho in 2000, the first Elimination Chamber match. Wrestlemania 30 with Daniel Bryan. Just tons of great matches. And then you throw in the work he did with the PC and NXT. He's certainly one of the most influential figures in WWE history, for better and maybe sometimes in the past for worse. But you can't say he is not one of the more influential figures in the history of that company. Look, you can go all the way back to the Montreal Screwjob, and I know it was, Cornette tells the story about how exasperated he was because he was on creative at the time, Jim Cornette. And, he was the one who kind of just tossed the idea out there about, you know what? Fuck it. Just, you want your belt back, just fuck the guy over, Moolah, the Spider Lady, Wendy Richter angle, you want to do something like that, just do it. But there was a famous phone call that happened that had Triple H on there with Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon. And they were talking about Montreal, and Shawn apparently was crying and getting very emotional and was of the attitude like, basically, whatever you want to do. And supposedly, as legend has it, it was Triple H, who at the time was like a virtual nobody compared to some of the, the big names in the company, but he was buddies with Shawn. But again, I also think it speaks to how much Vince even then probably respected him, but he was the one who spoke up and said, basically in so many words, no, fuck that. He doesn't want to do business. We'll do business for him. Now, was that the catalyst, for Vince doing what he did to Brett? Was it Cornette? Who knows? But I bring that up as an example, again, just to show how influential in many different ways that this man has been at various points in the history of this company. You cannot deny the man's impact and that he should not be in the Hall of Fame. I have no issue with it. The rest of my predictions for the Hall of Fame this year, when I did the prediction show last year, I mentioned Sid Vicious, Haku, Mickey James, and Demolition. I hope we get at least some of those names in there this year.